Okay, we're going to take a slightly different trajectory for this week's consideration. Uh, right off the bat, Venus is going to switch on the 10th, Tuesday, from Aquarius into Pisces, where it becomes exalted. So, uh, that's an uptick or a tailwind. The other two aspects are going to be transpiring next weekend. One is Saturn going from Pisces into Aries. That has a long footprint, and I will be discussing it more in depth next weekend. And the last thing is on Sunday of this week, the Sun is going to be in a square aspect with Uranus. And I will allude to that in what it is that I am about to share with you. This is really more of I'm going to be reading something because I basically wrote almost all of it myself. So enjoy the ride. I call it Hermes and Prometheus Converse. This was transpiring as last week was coming to a close. I'm going to say Thursday, Friday in that realm, and then I spent all weekend in composing or transcribing what it is that has taken place and all the avenues that follows. During last night's dream, I was instructed to send out for the assistance of a scribe to write down what was transpiring. To my surprise and delight, Hermes showed up, ready and willing to the task. The key was organizing what was being shown to me into appropriate language for the ongoing Aquarius signature. Initially, the approaching solar eclipse set this all in motion. That's on the 17th. I have been tuned into this for some time, as this eclipse will be exactly on my natal ascendant. The footprint for any eclipse can span varying lengths of time, and this one got my attention as the buildup of celestial substance in the sign of Aquarius has been tickling my triple Aquarius vibrations. I was born with 4 planets in this region of space: Moon, Sun, Mars, and Mercury. Before proceeding down this seemingly astrological path too far, I must mention that I utilize a shamanic approach to much of my life. For those who might resonate with this is a journey process to be in the positions to invite energy signatures into the living process from a zone often referred to as non-ordinary reality. In the life dance, there are many journeys available to engage with as we build substance with versions of our larger beingness. Excuse me. I came to realize during the dream time of last night that life is a potential voyage encompassing many a journey process, or a mini journeyed process. Sometimes I can feel like there are little excursions away from the main voyage. The key is to recognize maintaining enough latitude always to discover that where one is headed is a variable. This is important, for we, as incarnate beings, becoming so fixed on any set destination might curtail the magic of soul development. I'm talking about last week's, this week's 2 shamanic drum circles laid the tracks for what transpired last evening. It was so potent that I had to get up at 2:15 in the morning and begin to write out a rough sketch of what was being shown to me. And it took about a half an hour to capture enough of the essence so that I could, come back to it the next day and, fill it out. I will be bouncing back and forth from within the astrological landscape and the shamanic story as it unfolds. This is because these seemingly two different paths are often intertwined in much of how my life path unravels. The astrological characters, planets, to me, are living beings in constant interaction with one another that I, as an astrologer of 56 years, enjoy tuning into what kinds of conversation are they having with one another. The shamanic vehicle assists within this zone of interface with my celestial friends. To the shaman, everything is alive, and we are a part of this everything. Learning to listen effectively is the key. Now, eclipses happen when the sun and the moon align either by conjunction or opposition to in a close aspect to the lunar nodes. There is a range of degree separation from the nodal points that create an eclipse. The moon moving between the Earth and the sun is a solar eclipse, or conversely, the Earth moving between the sun and the moon, a lunar eclipse. There are many factors that establish how total these eclipses appear, but I will leave the geometry to your discovery. The importance of any eclipse is that they can bring change. Not everyone will tune into the aspects of this change in the same fashion. It might depend on the proximity of this aspect being in relation to where your planetary pattern exists. The closer to the degrees of a particular eclipse are to where the planet's positions you were born with, the more likely you will be tapped on the shoulder with the sense that something is transpiring that ignoring is not the best choice. I might point out here that the lunar nodes, always traveling opposite to one another, move in an opposite direction to the rest of the planets. Something else to consider is that these lunar nodes, one north and one south, set up the potential of a destiny factor at play. This is a bit more complicated than to refer to the north node as one's destiny and the south node as challenges to this. One might picture the infinity symbol flowing in a direction moving from the south node to the north, but then returning from the north node to the south. And in the middle sits the moon at the crossover point. There are the lunar nodes, so there is always sensing or feelings transpiring. These energies are always in motion. We are born with a version of this matrix at work, with aspects of the south node being a signature of something we came to work on for soul growth in the current incarnation. It is likely, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, that factors from previous incarnation loops may not have played out as well as we might have hoped for from a soul growth perspective. There is a soul directive to facilitate an appropriate handling of these matters. This is the south node signature, and we may repeat this in our current life, but we might also recognize the pull from the north node. Situations may arise beckoning our attention away from the seemingly and often repetitive versions of well-trod paths we have followed before. This is not a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence, but sits in the availability spectrum all the time, sparked by the celestial dance of the many players surrounding us. Life is always in continuous motion as the celestial dance we are a part of. It would be helpful to recognize that destiny is of this same nature, changing as we step up to the plate and face circumstances that land on our table with willingness to sometimes make challenging choices. Tuning into this nodal dance, can you feel the pull or alter something in your makeup or a particular chosen life direction? That's a meditation question. The nodal cycle is about 18 and a half years for them to return to approximately the same zodiacal positions, and a couple of times a year they align with the solar-lunar movement and enhance the change, in quotes, potential. This is the eclipse factor and includes at least one solar and one lunar and sometimes a third eclipse during the very early or late eclipse season. These, of course, carry the change, in quotes, signature as an invitation to participate. Always remember, free will determines what you are tasked with setting as your own direction. Depending on how close a particular eclipse transpires to your natal chart points will set parameters as to if you will be more or less inclined to feel any pressure patterns to shift perspective. As I mentioned at the beginning of this consideration, this upcoming eclipse on February 17th is a new moon solar eclipse near the North Node at 28 degrees Aquarius, which is my ascendant degree. One of this week's celestial signatures is Mercury in Aquarius square to Uranus in Taurus at 27 degrees. Uranus began this week by turning direct after a long retrograde cycle since September of last year. Since the beginning of this year, it has been at this 27 degrees and will remain so until early to mid-March. The lineup of planets moving through Aquarius will all form this same square aspect to Uranus. Let's invite our characters onto the stage officially. Hermes has a strong affinity to Gemini and by association to Mercury. It was as well able to traverse the realms from heaven to hell with little challenges. It also has a strong affinity to psychopomp work. Uranus can be attuned to the signature of Prometheus. The myth goes that he stole fire from the gods and brought it to mankind. You might wonder about this. This is more of a metaphor, which is a vehicle used to transport something from one location to another. Was it literal fire, or was it perhaps the igniting of a mental shift to awaken latent aspects of human consciousness? We should all be aware that Uranus has the capability of shaking things up. Things like revolution, earthquakes, storms, etc., rather suddenly appearing. That is a shallow perspective on what is really transpiring. These things don't just happen in the instant they erupt. There's a cycle or process that builds up toward the release of some pent-up energy. The earthquake is the release of tectonic fractures within a moving and alive being, the earth, that is changing as everything does. The storm that unleashes its fury seemingly in a particular moment is the result of many atmospheric waves interacting with the planet over a time frame that builds to where it can no longer restrain itself. A revolution is created by the buildup of levels of discomfort in the general population to a point where those in positions of authority can no longer maintain control with rules and structures they have put in place to keep things at bay. Now, what exactly does Prometheus do? He awakens in mankind aspects that lay dormant but were meant to be excavated in the ongoing soul level of expansion required for each of us to recognize our place in the creative life dance. Prometheus puts out the call, "Wake up!" He is the great awakener. I would add to this that Many see the disruption related to your Uranus as very challenging to themselves and their world vision. I would remind you that stubbornly standing in the way of something that seeks release from fixed ideas and unwillingness to change will be a challenge. It can seem as if it is coming from exterior influences that are bumping up against the structures you placed in the way of growth. Oh, why has this experience suddenly arrived to rattle my world? You must ask yourself, how long have I ignored what has been asking me to alter my direction? So, when Hermes volunteered last night to step up to the opportunity of sitting down in conversation with Prometheus as the energies of the upcoming eclipse were amping up, I was moved to welcome this dialogue. I was born with Saturn on my chart's descendant in the 7th house of the other, in quotes. Now, Saturn is life lessons, among other things, and the teacher archetype. Being my ruling planet, I am instructed to always pay attention to what it represents and in what arena of life, both from the standpoint of paying attention to what others bring for me to learn. I am as well tasked with providing a lesson plan for others to consider. For this reason, much of what I offer comes through the drive within myself to facilitate as much as possible a concise clarity to the direction I am inviting others to follow, as they might consider. Also, because of this, the assistance, I welcome Hermes through last night's dream cycle. The Prometheus factor is vital, as my natal Uranus, Prometheus, is at 27 degrees of Gemini, in trine to the Aquarius point, being stimulated by the train of planets that will tickle this square aspect to Prometheus going forward. The proximity of my 28 degrees Aquarius ascendant is knocking at the door like an opportunity. An ascendant side note. This is the easternmost point at the moment when one takes their first breath. In other words, it is rising on the eastern horizon. What does it signify? This is our first awakening to the current incarnation, our greeting and introduction to say, "Hello, world, here I am." This is one of the first interfaces we put out to interact with our fellow beings. Many times, the potency of this point can be mistaken for the overall archetype we are seen to represent. Let's look at the Sabian symbol for this particular degree, since it is what the eclipse is emphasizing. So the Sabian symbol for both my ascendant and this solar eclipse at 28 degrees Aquarius from Dane Rudger's An Astrological Mandala book reads, "A butterfly emerging from a chrysalis," and the keynote, "the capacity to utterly transform the character of one's consciousness by radically altering the structural patterns of everyday living and the types of relationships one enters upon." And a little more considerations. This is the second time within a very short span of cycles that the butterfly symbol appears. Example, Aquarius 25. Here, what is emphasized is the process of metamorphosis itself. It is the fourth symbol of a five-fold sequence, and it stresses the essential character of the activity required at this stage of the cycle. Example, nothing short of a complete renewal of all the implications of being alive as a human individual will do. A radical change is needed. At this stage, this change is individual and mental. It should be seen against the backdrop of humanity as a whole. What is revealed is the potential ability of every human being to participate in a higher realm of evolution after his or her emergence from a critical state of transition. At this fourth stage of the 65th subcycle, the key word is metamorphosis. In spiritual terms, this implies initiation, i.e., entering a higher realm of conscious existence and there joining a sacred company. That's the Sabian symbol for this particular upcoming eclipse to meditate upon. Now, all that I have written with Hermes' assistance is preliminary to a certain, what do I want to phrase this as? There's a sensing of dynamic change I have wrestled with as each week I consider appropriate and effective explanation of the celestial chatter that from an astrological perspective can be an invitation for each of us to grasp what is right for us. At the same time, the shamanic draw, combined with the astrological bent, has been seeking an expanded platform upon which to offer even more. The irony is that we each must be tapped on the shoulder and be willing to accept the mantle of responsibility a shamanic trajectory entails, if that should be a path you are called to. Enter, from stage right, Prometheus. I have willingly accepted the task assigned by Spirit to alter my grasp of the human spirit interface as a part of my soul's path. The continuous life trek I am drawn to follow asks Promethean questions as to the meaning of life, soul, spirit, and the appropriate footsteps to next take. The answer arrives. Change is the only constant to being alive. Sometimes this is of minor significance, and other times an entirely new trajectory unfolds before one. This current eclipse signature, for me, is no small event. In the ongoing conversation involving my oversoul, profound questions surface all the time. A long time ago, the modern cultural trajectory of birth, learn, work, retire, die failed to inspire me. Along came astrology, and the questions took on a life of their own. The expansion of cosmic awareness was an invitation to participate within a celestial group, and led to the discovery that we are all continuing to grow all the time. One cycle of earth walking was insufficient to what our soul needed to engage effectively with the meaning of life. The astrological tool can offer some insight into the multi-life dance moves we signed up for, but the addition of the shamanistic perspective has proved a substantial enhancement to the soul awakening process. It is almost like astrology opens certain doors for consideration, and shamanism allows one to pass through these doors in the ongoing life adventure. Let's see if we can construct an appropriate container within which the shamanic process can thrive. Even as I write these words, my awareness shifts into a spatial context that I have discovered is so immense as to defy human capacities to fathom. I will take a stab at it anyway. One of the first discoveries along the shamanic path is that we're not alone, or maybe more precisely, never alone. I discovered shamanism through a process of a lot of synchronicities that I followed that led me to my first human mentor. While the physicality of this person was a fact, the avenues of awareness brought into the conscious realm expanded any version of my human container way beyond anything I had been taught growing up. If you are steeped in any limited understanding of what you as a human being are, you're going to be blown out of the water. This expansion potential you are invited to consider comes with a vast quantity of responsibilities. Choose wisely, because turning back will come with its challenges. I recall the words from a song back along the way that expresses this best. You ain't seen nothing yet, boom, boom. Anyway, each person will proceed at the pace they set for themselves, unless Spirit deems you are ready for a push. I can only offer my own perspective from my own trajectory. The irony to this experience is that there is only so much one can glean from written material. Your best teachers are within and are your spirit team. They arrive when appropriate to assist you with situations you encounter along the trail. There are no real constraints as to who or what will show up in any circumstance. You will discover them yourself. There is always the protocol of setting up an intention when opening this field. Request power, protection, and support, and you will receive this virtually every time. Practice is the key. My personal journey has led me to wander into profound regions of spiritual soul process as to what is it that Spirit is wanting me to discover. I was born into the Aquarius archetype this time around. Aquarius is referred to as the water bearer and is often confused as being a water sign. It is not. It is an air sign. Picture, if you will, the air picking up and carrying a message upon the wind to deliver somewhere. There's our metaphor again. The image, of course, arises of the clouds carrying water to be released where it happens. Water has a capacity to carry substance. All the water signs of the zodiac are about connection, or a reminder of the fact that we are not alone ever. There is truth present in the water element on many levels. Being connected to everyone, everything, requires for being sustainable a vast reservoir of truth and trust that originates within ourselves. When we engage with another and don't align ourselves with truth, our potential storyline in attempting to keep the story straight over time will and might lose track of what I said and when and to whom. That is unsustainable. The image of the water bearer has a figure attempting to pour from a container onto or into a situation. Thus, as the water bearer, we are tasked to pour the water of truth in every experience we encounter. So where does one attain this water of truth in ample supply to have for offering when required? Ideas might float around along the lines of choosing the right container and then to locate the right spring of substance with which to fill and refill from. What I have discovered is that the container as something you visibly control is not as relevant as you might suppose. The irony is that it is the interior of the container that is significant. This is a construct of your fabrication. So what in your living process do you hold so sacred as to see it required as an ingredient within the container? I will come back to this shortly. This is a quote from Hank Wesselman. He was my shamanic mentor from his book Vision Seeker. He was my first shamanic mentor. It goes along the lines of seeking for deeper and deeper connection to Source with a capital S that lies beyond everything that is spirit as he engaged with this level of being. This is the quote. The power and wisdom to which I have had access went far beyond anything that could be called human. And from this perspective, I believe that the statement, the universe is filled with love, is an erroneous one. What do you think of that? The word love refers to a human emotion, and there was nothing human in what I felt. Nothing. A more correct way to express this thought might be to say that there are two predominant states expressed by the universe. The state of being in balance, in harmony, in connection, and the state of being out of balance, in disharmony, and disassociated. The first might be interpreted as a positive or life-enhancing state, or as love in the human sense. The other might be experienced as its opposite, as negative or life-denying, or as destructive when interpreted through the lens of the human mind. Still quoting, all the myriad human emotions and feelings might thus be said to be expressed by one state or the other. This is the key. Both are necessary, it seems, comprising as they do the breathing in and the breathing out of the universe. Its soul breath, one might say. End quote. Let's consider once again our Aquarius container. Told you I'd come back to it. First, I would remind each and every one of us that we all have an Aquarius part built into our matrix of being. It just might run more upfront for some of us than for others. So have you put anything into your wisdom container? Aquarius reminds us, you're not the source of the water. We are stewards or beings in service to something. This will require that in inspecting the interior of our container, it should be absolutely clean and clearly empty, an available container. How can you be in touch with the sense of the right time to do something in alignment with larger cycles unless you have emptied yourself? The basic act of emptying oneself is to accept the guidance and counsel of someone or something outside of yourself. This would be Source with the capital S. As a servant to this, allow what needs to flow through from Source, capital S, and through your vessel outward. I have for quite some time been standing at this crossroads and allowing what Spirit requires to be my expression through me as a human tool. On this voyage, in this current incarnation, I take journeys and occasional excursions which my weekly celestial chatter are reflecting. I get two things that people ask me about the chart consultation process. One, where do you get the things you say? I've never heard them before. My answer, that is getting out of the way and allowing the flow through from spirit. And the second question, how long does it take to do a chart reading? My response, 3 hours, 56 years, and counting. That's all I got for you for this week. There are things afoot. I hope I haven't talked too long, but what came through this last weekend was extremely potent, and I felt the need for writing it down, and I'm sharing it with you. This is an exposure of my inner core soul being. Thank you for listening.